Hello, everyone. Welcome to the WrestleWatch Free Agency Podcast, the only podcast where pro wrestling and free agency collide, and we discuss them both.
Oh no!
Yes, the collision is happening here.
No, I think we're talking about Collision, right?
Yeah, we are. Well, we are going to be talking about Collision. We're going to talk about Collision for sure. But I'm Doug.
I'm Ryan.
Yes, and welcome everyone. Ryan, how's your week?
It was pretty uneventful, I would say, but I did realize that tonight, it seems that there is a wrestling show in walking distance to me that will have Kenta on the card, and I did not know this until like yesterday. I didn't know that this event existed. It's a what's the promotion? CZW has as their show, and I didn't know at all about it until somebody like mentioned it to me, like, "Oh yeah, you're in Baltimore, Ryan, right? Get you go to this?" And I was like, I guess I will.
Yeah, I guess you could walk over there.
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't recognize really anybody else on the card other than just Kenta, but you know, I'm going to go back in time to last week and think about our discussion about the state of the indies, and I will be the change I want to see in the world.
There you go.
I'm
also going to I'm going to Black Label Pro next month. They have it's what do they have? They have Dominic Garrini versus Lee Moriarty, and they also have Kevin Koo versus Miyu Yamashita. So
okay.
I will check that out. I don't know what else they announced. Those two jumped off for me. So I'm going to go check that out on the 7th.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's it. So it's been a decent week though. I mean, we had it was Mother's Day, so last week was very hectic. But this week's a little bit more low key. And as it's a little more low key, there's not a lot to talk about.
Yeah, no, there's not. There's not a lot to talk about. That's one of the interesting things that we've mentioned before, is that it seems like there's a little bit of a wind down, a cooling off of the free agency season at this moment.
Yeah, and it makes sense if you think about it, because a lot of WWE's contracts seem to wrap up right around WrestleMania.
Mm-hmm.
Japan seems to be right around January usually. And then AEW, just by nature of them having all these really long deals, we don't really know who's up and when they're up. And it might be a while. So it's a little quiet on the WrestleWatch front, but I imagine that's going to change. Probably this summer we'll have a little bit more to talk about, and then going into the fall. But for right now, it's calmed down a little bit. We do have some things to talk about. We will be discussing them in the middle half. There were some adjustments and movements in the tier list. There are some others that didn't move that I think are worth talking about. But I think for today we're going to talk about a couple other things though, first of all. And it's a little bit different from what we usually discuss here on the podcast, because it's a little bit more broad and business based, but I still think it ties in to what we talk about here on the podcast, the WrestleWatch, and it's going to be the world of free agency and how talent views their options. So I think this is an important discussion, and that is, for me, I want to start talking about the residency that AEW has set up in Arlington, Texas, this coming summer, going into All In.
So do you have the information in front of you there, Doug?
I don't, but I have it off the top of my head. Unless you have it in front of you and you want to read it.
Oh no, I don't have it in front
of me. Don't worry about it. I have it, but here's the deal with this. So for the month of July, more or less, like July into August, they're having a residency in Arlington, Texas, which if you aren't familiar with the Texas area, that would be right around Dallas.
Yeah, it's a midway point between Dallas and Fort Worth. If you were to look at the map there, it's like directly south also from DFW Airport, which is a major hub airport.
Yeah. And it's going to be an interesting setup because it's only like a 2,500 seat venue. It's an esports arena.
Yeah.
And with wrestling, it's probably going to be even smaller because the stage will take some of that out. But what they're going to be doing is they're going to be holding pretty much a month of collisions there. So and Death Before Dishonor, which is usually always in North Texas. That's just where that show usually is, so that's not really surprising. And then they also said they're going to be recording a number of Ring of Honors separately there that are going to be announced later.
Yeah.
So they're going to be putting a lot of different people in this building, like, and for different shows, and they're not moving at all. So the dates are July 20th, July 27th, August 1st, August 10th, August 17th for Collision, and then Friday, July 26th is going to be Death Before Dishonor.
Mhm.
So I want to talk about this because I think there's been it's a wide range of discussions based off whether or not people think this is good or bad.
Yeah. So
So yeah.
yeah, what's your feeling on it, just to start off? Like how do you, on that divide of if you think that it's a good or bad idea?
Well, I want I will answer that, but first I want to kind of take a step further back and
Uh-oh.
talk about AEW since Collision started.
Hmm.
Because Collision started almost a year ago in June when they had that United Center show.
Yeah.
And what that essentially did was it overnight doubled the amount of tapings that they have to do every week
Yes.
and the amount of tickets and shows they need to sell every other week. And because of that, we are seeing the diminishing returns that they're getting from their ticket sales and their shows. Because for a long time, when AEW came to your town, that was a lot of times that was like the one time you had to see them, or that for a long time because they were
Yeah.
going to come and you better go, otherwise who knows when they're coming back.
Unless you're like Chicago and then you
Yeah,
get them like 5 times a year.
yeah, unless you're me. Unless you're me, then it's like, yeah, every I go there. I distinctly remember a show was this might have been 2021. No, it was like February 2022. Was it?
Yeah, there
No,
was a
no.
Chicago
I
show then,
Okay, I
around then.
remember. It was November 2021. I remember this. It was the Thanksgiving Eve show, and during the event, like Tony Khan came out and says, "Hey, we're coming back in 10 weeks." And tickets are on sale tomorrow. And I just remember that one being like, yeah, this is ridiculous. But yeah, but for the most part, people don't have that luxury. They're not going to
Yeah.
get shows that quickly. So now with the expanded schedule, that was not necessarily the case. Now they weren't necessarily running the same markets, but it was still a situation where, if you were in Chicago like me, you might have a Collision in Peoria, which is about an hour and a half outside of Chicago, 2 hours outside of Chicago, depending on where you live in the area. And because of that, you saw ticket sales not just going down for Collision, but going down for Dynamite too. And I do think that that is a big part of it that a lot of people kind of ignore. The fact that they've, expanded their schedule and are going to these places more often, that you're gonna see diminishing returns. It did.
Yeah. But at the same time, of course, when you look at, on a grand scheme of where their ticket sales have been over time, their ticket sales, when you look at like the weekly events, they're selling more tickets than ever at this point.
Yeah,
Just so happens that it's over 2 days in a week.
right. Now, I can understand. So when you look at what they're doing here, it's clear that they see that this was something that was taking away from Dynamite. Because whether or not I'll say, this, if you like Collision, and I love Collision, I think Collision's been fantastic. It still has a perception of being the B show. I think that most people would agree with that. And
Yeah.
and Dynamite is clearly perceived as the A show. The ratings bear that out as well. So I think there is this idea that they are maybe conceding that a little bit, and they are also trying to kind of salvage their ticket sales a bit. Because what they're doing here by putting this residency in Texas for a whole month, you're no longer having to you're actually essentially going back to that era where Dynamite was a big special touring brand that everyone would see. And I wouldn't be surprised if they just keep doing this residency thing with different places. I think this is a good idea, to be completely honest. And
Well, mhm.
sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to point out that the amount of shows that it's like getting rid of from the schedule, when you look at when you zoom out to a year long schedule, of about 100 tapings in a year, give or take, because of, they could be running, a double taping of Dynamite and Collision in one night sometimes. Um, it's not really reducing the amount of, it's like 5% less at that point of shows, that are being knocked out off the schedule. So it's not a giant thing that's going to really change the value of Dynamite, I don't think. For the shows that are happening at that same time, it's only knocking out, like, again, like 5% of all the shows that they're doing for the touring. Now, if they keep doing this, if they do more residencies like you're saying, then I can see that argument. But for me, when I notice that it's just like, oh, it's just 5 shows, well, I'm still going to be waiting a year for Dynamite anyway, so, or Collision anyway, so it doesn't change anything for me. It
Yeah,
might
well,
change. It takes away maybe one Chicago show or one New York show, maybe, but like that's like it.
right. But if you were, let's say, like one of these shows, one of these collisions was going to be in Baltimore.
I've heard of that place.
Yes. If one of them was there, instead it's part of this residency, that's going to go ahead and kind of build up more of that demand in Baltimore for later shows that they're going to have, like a Dynamite.
I
So,
I suppose, but they're also screwing around with the schedule with the Baltimore region anyway. But that's another discussion. They're your comment about Peoria. They're putting the next Baltimore Washington local show. They're putting it out at a place called Fairfax. That is beyond the Washington Beltway in Virginia. It is very far away. But they're going to probably like look in their schedule and like, oh yeah, we gave a show to Baltimore Washington. We're covered.
I could see that. That's fair. So, and I think we're seeing they're probably seeing that as well because they're probably going back to I mean, I'll say this. When they were like hot in like 2021, there did seem to be a drive to maybe try to run more the bigger buildings. Like we have
Yeah.
the United Center, and we're not doing the United Center this year. They're claiming, at least Tony Khan kind of alluded that it was because of the DNC being in Chicago this year, but that's like 2 weeks before. So I don't know that I buy that completely. I think they just can't fill United Center.
There's also
And
the kayfabe of, oh, it's the fifth anniversary.
yeah, and so they're going to go back to the Now Arena. I get that too. And full disclosure, I don't like the Now Arena. I think it's a pain to get to.
Hmm.
But having said that, I understand what they're doing, and I think that there is a cost cutting thing going in right now. We're seeing, especially with this residency, because I think they are seeing that it's like we're not getting. They're looking at the diminishing returns across the board. Like, what are we spending money on that we're really not benefiting from? Because I
Hmm.
don't think they're going to see like any negative impact from running in these smaller buildings. And if I'm being completely honest, one of the things that was always a criticism of Collision was that it didn't necessarily differentiate itself enough from Dynamite. I
Hmm.
think that this, just by having it in venues like this, if they're going to keep it like this, that's going to make a big difference.
Well, I mean, one of the ways that they differentiated themselves, at least at the beginning, was having a new set. And then for some reason, only 6 months later, they got rid of the set for some reason.
Yeah, it was, and they all obviously they had, certain people that were more or less on Collision. I'm not just talking about Punk, but FTR were kind of the Collision guys for a while. There was a while where Danielson was a Collision guy, and that's not really the case anymore. I feel
Yeah.
like everyone is just on wherever they're on.
Yeah.
But the reason I want to talk about this though is not just because of what this is for news in terms of that, but I kind of want to talk about the idea of talent and how they perceive this because fans perceive it a certain way, but how does talent perceive this? And a couple reasons I want to bring that up from a couple angles. First of all, doing something like this is something that is going to make it easier for talent. It's going to be
Hmm.
easier on talent because the travel is not going to be nearly as bad. Because first of all, flying in, I know this for a fact. Flying into Dallas is a very, very easy thing to do. There's a lot of direct flights into it. It's a hub airport. You fly in, fly out, you get home real quick. If you live in the Texas area, obviously, it's even better. It's a centralized location in the country. Having that kind of locked in there is going to make things a lot easier, quality of life wise, for AEW talent. That's the first part. That's one part of the coin. Now, if you flip the coin on the other side, you look at this, they're going to be running conservative. I would say this, being generous. I would say 2,000 people in these buildings at most, and that's if they sell every single ticket. And doing that for 5 weeks in a row, 5 Saturdays in a row, plus the Ring of Honors that they're doing, that's a tall order.
Yeah.
And so is that even if that's if they hit that? So is the talent on the other side, even if it does make their quality of life better, is it gonna? They do have egos. These are people with egos, and they are gonna, you know, kind of wonder. It's like, is this gonna make them feel like they're part of the minor leagues?
Hmm.
So I don't know the answer to that question, but I bring it up only because I do think that when we get to this situation right now where AEW and WWE may start offering comparable money, and I don't know that they are yet, but that was always a debate that I had in my head. Is WWE going to start matching these deals? And they have been doing it defensively. They've
Yeah.
been matching the money. So if the money is the same, they may look at this and be like, well, this is the minor leagues.
Yeah, I mean, it brings something to the mind of having a warehouse down in Orlando.
Yep.
Um, Although at the same time, I think that this was something that, um, at least with Ring of Honor, people were advocating for this with Ring of Honor of doing the model that TNA does
Hmm.
of find a city, do a weekend, film your stuff, go to the next city the next month, you know? And they kind of did that originally at Universal Studios for a little bit for Ring of Honor when they were doing the dark tapings there at Universal Studios in Orlando. So it's not a foreign concept within the AEW universe or galaxy, excuse me. I'm trying to remember my Jericho terms. That they would do something like this, and it seemed that like during that time, that talent enjoyed the way that that was being presented. They also were bringing in foreign talent during those tapings too, and were able to make it seem like they were in the United States for longer than they actually were. So, for example, they had Zack Sabre Jr. was on some of those early Honor Club episodes of Ring of Honor because he did one taping weekend in Orlando and then he was there for a month, you know. So this is a little bit different though, just because of course it is over the course of a month they're doing multiple tapings. So I'm
which I think is
intrigued.
which I think is
Go ahead.
good. I think that makes it feel a little bit more professional than just like a, taping 4 weeks all at once.
Yeah, I agree with that because I think that you'll be able to first off there's of course the possible issue that like something happens in real life during the time that you're waiting to release these episodes and now you can't change it. You can't, uh make things different on the episode that you already recorded. So it also allows for the possibility of, okay, yeah, so maybe the first week we'll have somebody big and the last week we'll have somebody big there. So people will maybe fly in or it gives more of an interest curve for people that are buying in early, like, okay, so I'm going to the arena and seeing how it's going to go. And then, oh, well, the last week it's going to be a world title match with Swerve and Danielson or somebody like that. Like it gives a little bit of like an incentive
Yeah.
for the structure.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. And I think that this is also, I had an idea
Uh-oh.
initially of what they could do with this, where they would essentially have almost like a season ticket deal where would be done to kind of try to increase the amount of people that would go to these shows. And the idea in my mind is okay, the average fan, how many shows are they going to a year?
Of like an AEW fan,
Yeah.
probably two.
Okay, two, right? That's probably a fair number. How many would you say go to three?
Depends on what city you're in.
Okay. Like, is it fair to say that once you hit 4, you're looking at a situation where you're talking about very, very small number of people.
Yeah, I would say that it's a smaller number of people, but it's something that I think if you were to have four shows in one city in one year, you could possibly, you would definitely get the same people coming
Right.
out. Yeah.
And then finally, 5, that's negligible numbers, right?
Yeah, that's somebody like me. Yeah.
Yeah. So now here's what I always kind of thought they should have done. And I don't know why they never did this, but they should have done something where you could just pre-buy 5 tickets and then you'd get like some type of like, I don't know, like a VIP pass. And what that would do after you buy your 5, you then at that point can go to the venue of any event, any AEW event, with your little pass showing that you already paid for your 5 tickets. And if there are tickets available on the day of, you can get in for free and just
Mhm.
get whatever seats they have available for the level you bought. So kind of an idea of just like, hey, once you pay for 5, you get, 6, show 6, show 7, show 8, show up to whatever. You get those, you just go into the building for free. Uh, I feel like that would be something, as Cardi mentioned, there's very few people that are doing like 6, 7, 8 shows anyway. So it's a very, very negligible number.
Mhm.
But it would help kind of encourage people to attend multiple shows and it would get more people at these events. So this to me is almost like trying to start doing that.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see if they actually do a ticket bundle for these events.
And that's why I'm saying that because I do think they're realizing they do have a very, very dedicated hardcore fan base.
Yeah.
But the question becomes, do they have a dedicated hardcore fan base that's going to go to 5 shows in 5 weeks or 6 shows in 5 weeks or
Yeah.
potentially more, depending on where these ROH tapings are?
Well, it makes me think also about just ticket pricing in general, of because AEW's ticket prices did go up slightly, and they've now been bringing them back down a little bit, especially for like the upper tier seats.
Yeah.
Um, but I've always it's always interesting because sometimes these discussions are very insular discussions about AEW only and not looking at the broader landscape at times. Um, so, for example, this CZW show that is at a venue that I do not understand how they're going to put a ring in this venue. It's technically outside. I think it's like has like a little courtyard, or it could be inside where they have a bull, like one of those bull machines, bull riding machines. I don't know where they're going to put this ring, but anyway, the ticket pricing for sitting for a seat is $80, and for standing, the lowest ticket price is $30. So when you compare that to AEW, it's pretty much the same ticket pricing.
Yeah.
Um,
Like 30
but
bucks to get into the door. That sounds about right for an AEW show.
yeah, yeah. So it's interesting then to look at like WWE, where I remember when they put on sale the SummerSlam at the Cleveland Browns Stadium, which is a great name for a stadium. Don't ever put a sponsor on that thing ever again. I just looked at the pricing, and the top tier are hundreds of dollars for nosebleed seats that are so far away from the ring. I just don't understand the how people justify that personally, because it's just so ridiculously expensive. But at the same time, I suppose then it's creating a perceived there's a perception by putting the tickets so expensive of this like your Disneyland vacation. You got to get to WrestleMania and you got to save up to it. So when you do go, you're going to make it the greatest time of your life. That kind of a thing. So, but yeah, it is interesting to me to look at like the all that stuff.
Yeah, well, here's the thing with that. WWE had an incredible hot streak over the last year for sure. I think if you look at WrestleTix, I do think we're starting to see signs that there may be uh a bit of a refraction.
Yeah.
Because we are starting to see, if you look at that they're still selling really well. But one thing I'm noticing with what WrestleTix kind of puts out is that we're seeing a lot more resale tickets thrown up on there.
Yeah, yeah, that was something that I noticed, especially with WrestleMania, was that like 25% of all the tickets were just being thrown immediately up for
Yeah.
resale.
Yeah, or even like this past Raw. Like Raw and Collision were both in Vancouver.
Uh-huh.
Like Collision did a really good crowd. They had like 7,000 people there.
It was somewhere around there, yeah.
Yeah, Raw did was there too. They did like eight.
Mm.
So it's questionable. I think it's fair to and granted, I'm not saying this is like, the sign that WWE is like in trouble or anything, but this is also their time where they kind of slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
But just looking preliminary at the preliminary numbers, it does look like this is a pretty rapid and steep drop from where they were in terms of, having these instant sellouts or close near instant sellouts where there wasn't a whole lot of tickets available on the resale market. We are not in that realm anymore. The ticket sales are strong still, but I'm definitely seeing a lot more resale. So I think the scalpers are finally gonna get wise to this and maybe stop buying.
Yeah, that's kind of my perception as well, is that I just don't think that they're still in a hot period,
Mhm.
but it's not as hot as it was before Mania. Like there's a sharp drop
Yeah.
for them.
I'm curious. I will revisit this probably in summer around SummerSlam to find out for sure, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, I think that gives us a nice time to take a little bit of a break here before we get into the changes to the WrestleWatch tier list. Does that work out for you, Doug?
I think so. Unfortunately out of regular coffee, so I'm drinking decaf right now, and that's very
Oh,
sad.
so you don't even know if you're picking up from that. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll be right back with the WrestleWatch podcast. All right, everybody, welcome back to the WrestleWatch podcast, the only podcast where we cover free agency in the world of professional wrestling, and now it seems a little bit ticket sales. I'm Ryan. That's Doug over there. Did you get your coffee refilled?
I did. I also got some Little Debbie powdered donuts as well,
Ooh.
just
Uh,
because why not? Seems appropriate.
I'm a tasty cake guy, but that's probably because I'm like in the greater Philly, Baltimore, DC, New York area.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's probably a little different.
Yeah. Um, well, you know what's also a little different is this week with the tier list, the WrestleWatch tier list, we only had two changes to the tier list this week. That's pretty rare for us, but as we said at the top of the show, it's a little bit I guess slow season, a little bit of a cold season for free agency news.
It is, and I do think the two that moved are not. And once again, it's kind of hammering home that point that it is the slow season. These two aren't exactly big names that
Mm.
are going to be shaking the world, but I do think there's going to be some interesting things to talk about with them. And then I also would like to talk about some of the people that were voted on that didn't have any movements.
So we will start then with Danhausen.
Yes. So
Uh,
Danhausen, go ahead.
Yes, he was added to the tier list this week in D tier. Doug, how did you vote on Danhausen?
So yeah, I voted C tier on him because I think he's someone who uh I think there is value in him very clearly, and AEW is not really using it for whatever reason because he's not been around. So I do not see him getting a renewal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're going to cut him or anything, but I don't think he's getting another contract just based off the way they're using him. So because of that, I think he will probably have the opportunity to go somewhere else. And I think that I could see TNA grabbing him, or I could see WWE grabbing him. I think he has value to both of those companies. Am I 100% sold that they will? No. But am I 100% sold that he won't get renewed by AEW? No. But I do think that it's very likely that if he does get cut, there's a chance that he will get picked up by all those. But it's all these variables right now are leading me to say C tier, that he's in at C.
Yeah. So I voted D tier. I was also the person that brought him up to the committee this
Mhm.
week of thinking about looking at him because last week on our episode, I presented my AEW 9, which was the new Magnificent Seven, and
Mhm.
it's bigger and badder, and it's a sequel, so we had to have more names.
Absolutely.
But Danhausen was on that list, and we discussed him last week, and my thoughts and feelings about him. I voted D because I think that there's a possibility that if and when he leaves AEW, which I think he will soon enough, I think that there's a chance that he just stays independent and works the indies as he's starting to do again already. Um,
I think that's
and
very
yeah,
reasonable too. That's a
yeah,
very real possibility.
yeah. So I just think that like there is a chance that he does sign with a TNA or a WWE. I think that it's a higher chance than a lot of people are putting it at that he'll go possibly to WWE even. I think that his gimmick is will work in WWE. It's silly, it's fun. The kids will love it. Um,
Yeah. But
so
he's definitely one of those people that does not need a promotion. He's very similar to like, Effie and Alley Catch.
yeah,
Where they yeah.
I would agree with that. Definitely.
Okay. So that's all I have to say on Danhausen.
That's all I have to say about Danhausen. So, how about we move over to the other person that moved up, down, all around on the tier list this week was Natalya. She moved up from F tier to D tier. It's come out that her contract is going to be coming up in the next few weeks, and it doesn't look like the deal has been signed yet for or offered yet for a renewal. Doug, how are you feeling about Natalya?
I I like Natalia. I do. I do think that she is slightly overrated.
Mm.
I think that people uh I think she's from a bygone era and has largely been one to kind of hold her own, but I don't think that she's, ever been like a world beater or anything that's, blown anyone away. I don't particularly see a reason why she would leave WWE now at this point in her career.
Hmm.
Um, because I feel like she's very comfortable there. The only reason she would leave is if she doesn't like her push and the way she's presented, because I don't think she's going to make any more money anywhere else. I don't think anyone's going to offer her what she's getting paid now. And if she's going, and I don't know anywhere else that would push her higher than she's getting pushed now. Like if she went to AEW, I don't foresee her getting a push.
Hmm.
Maybe if she went to TNA, but once again, I don't know that she's necessarily willing to take a pay cut to go to TNA. She just
Yeah.
doesn't drive me as that kind of person. She feels very much like a company person.
Mm. Yeah, I can see that. I think that also there's a possibility of her trying out some things in Japan.
Yeah,
Um,
I could see that absolutely, especially with the relationship that we're going to talk about after this discussion.
yeah. So I moved her up from F to D. That was my vote on it. I just think that they're just by the fact that she doesn't seem to have a contract yet, and her contract is due coming up shortly. I think that that puts her above the people that we have in F tier of the possibility of her of leaving. Of course, we also have down in F tier Becky Lynch, who was moved down there kind of off the feelings of like, well, everybody else is resigning and her husband's resigning, so it's likelier than not that she's going to resign, even though she doesn't have the contract yet. But everybody else down in F tier is generally people that are not as imminent as Natalya could be.
Yeah, and I think that's the big takeaway for sure. So I don't have a problem with Natalia being at D tier. In fact,
Mhm.
that might be where I had her at, to be completely honest.
Yeah. And then you mentioned that you wanted to talk about Bryan Danielson briefly, even though we don't have him on the tier list, right?
So yeah, so I uh it threw a little wrench into the nominating committee last week because I said I wanted to nominate him for a vote.
Hmm.
And a lot of people thought that was a ridiculous thing. but enough people agreed to humor me, and we nominated him for a vote to have him put on the list. And then in a twist of I don't even know what to say, I don't know what to call it, but in
Heel
me being
turn.
yeah, me just being ridiculous after I nominated him and was the driving force, I voted to not put him on the list in the first place.
Yeah, you're very Paul White about it. Yeah.
Yes, that was rough. I was very mean of me, but I wanted to do it because I wanted to have the discussion on him because he is, I think they said that his contract is coming up. Was it in June, they said?
Allegedly, I think that it's like running out around All In.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then he's gonna just work past that still. But then and then he'll that'll be his final full-time contract is the deal.
Yeah, that's what he
So
said. Yeah.
yeah. So does that mean he's going to be signing a part-time contract? Does that mean he's going to be working without a contract? I don't know. And he's also someone who has said that he did enjoy his time in WWE. He was not bitter about it. That was one of the things that he said that he kind of he talked about when Punk was like complaining about his time in WWE and how much he didn't like it, and Punk and Bryan Danielson was like, well, I actually had a fantastic time, and I still left just because he wanted to go to AEW. Because
Mhm.
of that, and because he's not necessarily going to be doing, he may not sign another contract at all. He may just be a free agent. Is it impossible that he makes a does a couple matches in other promotions like WWE? Is it impossible that he signs a short-term part-time deal with WWE? Even if it's like a three-match contract for, a couple events leading up to WrestleMania. I don't know that that's impossible. And because of that, that's why I thought maybe he's worth discussing and having on the list. However, after I've nominated him, I thought about it and I felt that that was kind of a far off uh, thing that I didn't necessarily see likely, and not enough that I would put him on the list. But I did want to bring that up because I do think people are making this assumption that he's some type of AEW lifer, and I don't think he is at all. I think if anything, he's going to be a freelance lifer going forward, where he just wants to work at a lot of different places. And I think we're going to start seeing that, him just popping up at random places. And I don't discount WWE as one of those options if WWE is willing to work with someone who doesn't have a contract.
Um, I my take on it is that I can't really see that. Because I think that his ability to work kind of wherever he wants to, he already kind of has that. It's just that he's not like gonna work a WWE show right now with his current contract with AEW. He can work pretty much any other country that he wants to work in, any other promotion, except for WWE. Like, so if he wanted to go back to WWE for a short time, I think that they're going to try to lock him in if he wants to go back. I think other than for a Hall of Fame ceremony, I think that if WWE was trying to bring back Danielson for something, they're going to try to lock him in. Um, I just can't see them being like, yeah, we'll just do 3 matches for you for a WrestleMania thing. They don't need him, really, you know? I think that he's much more valued to an AEW than he is to WWE at this point. Which goes through your flow chart there is that I think that AEW, when they're looking at Danielson and how he's kind of become an indispensable person for them, not just in front of the camera but behind the camera, to the point that Tony Khan is saying like, oh yeah, if I were to just croak and die tomorrow, maybe from a TK driver,
Yeah.
I would just tell Danielson to book the shows. So
And I
that
would
says a lot.
and I wouldn't discount that, when this contract is up, Tony Khan offers him some type of part-time remote work role in AEW that would more or less just to keep him away from doing that
Yeah.
and just to keep him in the loop. Because I do think he's going to be around. I do think when he says his full-time deal is up, to me that says, we don't know what that means. Like
We don't.
what is full time to him? That means he's not going to wrestle every week. Okay, is he going to wrestle monthly?
Yeah.
I mean, is he going to wrestle quarterly? Is it once a year? So,
Like,
yeah,
I mean, like if I'm sitting here and thinking about All In 2025, I'm thinking right now that he's going to be on the card. I would make that bet that he will be on the card at All In 2025.
yeah, I think I would too. And I think
Yeah,
he's gonna be a regular on. I think he's gonna be a regular in the company. I really do. I just don't think. I think that what it means to be a part timer, especially in this climate or in this company where there's no house shows
yeah,
and people already, wrestle like once or twice a month and that's it. It's it's going to be interesting to see like what that actually means. I'm
yeah,
guessing
and
it because to me, I got the impression it was more so like just being home,
yeah, yeah.
being
It's
home
is
more.
yeah. Birdie wants him to retire.
Yeah, because
Uh,
it seems like he's out of the house a lot, and even if he's not on these shows, he's there.
yeah,
So I'm guessing it could be something like that. But
yeah.
I just
Or even like like we have people like Rob Van Dam that are just popping up. You know.
Yeah, he could be I wouldn't mind that. He could be the Rob Van Dam. And listen, there's plenty of other matchups that we need with Bryan Danielson right now, and he's just dabbled in Mexico, and I think
Yeah,
that there's a lot of matchups there alone.
I still think that him doing a G1 is possible this year too,
Ah,
for that matter.
man, he might. I don't
He
know though.
might.
I don't know
Uh,
though.
yeah. I would also point out. Oh darn, I forgot what I was going to point out. Maybe that's a sign for
Yeah.
me that maybe we need to take a break here.
Yeah, let me just read through the tier list and then we can
Yeah.
take a break and come back for one last second. So here is the latest tier list. So for S tier, we have Camille, Jacob Fatu, Motor City Machine Guns, Eric Rowan. No one in A tier. B tier is Grizzled Young Veterans, Shelton Benjamin, Mustafa Ali, Katsuhiko Nakajima, and Ricky Starks. C tier is Leo Rush, Matt Hardy, Sheamus, Cameron Grimes, Hikuleo, and Speedball Mike Bailey. D tier is Malachi Black, Matt Cardona, Dustin Rhodes, Jeff Hardy, Jinder Mahal, Tekla, Kevin Owens, Natalya, and Danhausen. And then F tier is going to be Sari, Utami Hayashishita, Hook, El Phantasmo, Nikki Bella, Becky Lynch, Sammy Callahan, uh, Ethan Page, Gigi Dolan, Buddy Matthews, and Kito Kiyomiya.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, time for the last break before we go into our last segment.
Yeah. We'll be right back with WrestleWatch.
Let me go plug my phone in, actually. That's what I'm going to do on my break. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the WrestleWatch podcast. So, Ryan, the last thing I kind of want to talk about here is this news that Cyber Agent, who is the owner of Noah, Joshi Pro, DDT, they also own the streaming service that airs WWE in
Mm-hmm.
Japan. Uh, they there was a translated report that the president of Cyber Agent uh, wants to get closer relations with WWE and improve their working relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people latched onto this and were wondering what's going on here. Some even went so far to say that the Rossi situation with Marigold is all it's part of this and it's been a larger thing moving that's part of these moving pieces for a while now. And I don't know, I guess I want your thoughts on it. What do you think?
I'm still trying to wait it out to see if there are more news about this because it seems that nobody's really been reporting on this since it happened. This little news conference just saying, they plan to have a goal of strengthening a relationship with WWE, and that was pretty much all that was said. So I'm still on the side of thinking that this is more about Abima and about the streaming stuff rather than this is necessarily about the um relationship of the promotions within CyberFight with WWE. That's my personal feeling on it at the current moment.
I will I kind of agree, but I do think there is a lot of smoke with all the stuff that's been happening lately. We have obviously the Marigold thing. We have the Julia going to WWE, but also like working Noah and going to start off with Marigold. But then on the other end, we have uh, AEW, who is tightening their relationship with Stardom
Yeah.
and and BushiRoad in general. But they're not necessarily turning away uh, from from Cyber Agent Promotions we kind of as we saw the Shida is actually going to be wrestling in Tokyo Joshi Pro coming up.
Hmm.
But looking at this, it does appear that we're getting back to that 2017, 2018 era where there was like this triple uh triple group of like ROH, CMLL, and New Japan that were working together. We're kind of getting back to that, except now it's AEW, CMLL, and New Japan, and also we're adding Stardom into that because Stardom has been interacting and involved in AEW much more lately than they were even during ROH's days. Like I've
Hmm.
never seen. I mean, yeah, sure, they would have Hana Kimura and Kagetsu and them come into ROH every now and then and kind of work around WrestleMania weekend. They were on the Madison Square Garden show, but it was never like integrated in this way that they've been doing with Mina Shirakawa lately. And because of that, this does seem like whether or not Cyber Agent and WWE are tightening their relations, it does definitely seem like AEW and Bushiroad are tightening theirs.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was something that we mentioned a few weeks ago on the podcast about the way that the relationship with Stardom feels different than what it was and it has been with Tokyo Joshi Pro.
Yes.
It definitely seems that I mentioned before when we were talking about it that the the way that they were bringing in talent from Tokyo Joshi Pro was, hey, cool, here's a match or two, cool, bye, and that was it. It was like they came over, did a match, they left, no story. Even somebody like Yuka Sakazaki, that's technically signed to AEW, it was always a little bit weird that she just didn't have like a storyline. The only thing that she had was going for the Ring of Honor world title against Athena. And even that was kind of in that mode of like, I want a match. Okay, you can have a match. Cool, we have a match kind of story. It's not that deep when you compare it to, yeah, Mina Shirakawa, where you're like, oh, this is a story. This is a this is something that's going to really blossom once the Double or Nothing season ends and it goes into Forbidden Door season, I think.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's a big difference in how they're perceiving things. Also, they sent Willow over to Stardom to defend the TBS title. Um, yeah, sure, you could look at that as, oh, well, they're just, sending her over for a match. But when you think about it more deeply, it's that they're setting the seeds of AEW going over to Stardom and performing. And they're setting the seeds of the Stardom audience becoming familiarized with things like the TBS title.
Yeah, and we just saw that because that match just happened a couple hours ago, obviously.
Yeah,
But the interesting thing with that was, and people were like, "Oh, she beat Tam Nakano," like it was
a high
because
ranking person on the roster,
right, but
relatively speaking.
and she is, but at the same time, it's like Willow is a very high ranking title holder, and
Yeah,
Tam is coming back from injury and is not really. I mean, she's not. It's not like she's holding a belt at the moment.
yeah, but it's not like it's the fifth member of Odatai,
Yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah. So it's interesting. It just feels like it's a lot more open in that. They're tightening up their relationship a lot more. So I do
Yeah.
think that does leave a window open for Cyber Agent to potentially get something with WWE. And let's be honest, it would be in WWE's best interest to kind of do that because they would benefit a lot from having a partner in Japan because you have talent who we kind of seen in the past that would like to work in Japan and would like to work in different promotions and just can't because they're locked in WWE. If they were willing to open that up, that might be a good negotiating tactic. It's something that they could do when they have someone whose contract is coming up and say, hey, you signed with us. You could work a Noah show, or you could go work in Tokyo Joshi Pro. You can go do all these different things. You could even go. Maybe they'll try to get something going with AAA now that WWE AEW seems to be a lot more closer with CMLL. I don't think any of that is off the table. I think we could start seeing these camps kind of dividing. We could see the Iron Curtain, if you will, and just people kind of like either joining up with NATO or the Warsaw Pact.
Yeah, and then we'll have who would be the third world countries in that scenario? I guess GCW,
Yeah.
the meeting ground where
Yes.
everybody's trying to compete. I will point out with this that the way that AEW does their relationships is very different from the way that WWE is likely thinking about their relationships. Again, we talked about the exclusivity kind of thing when we were talking about Bryan Danielson earlier on the show, where my view of it is that if Danielson is going to go back to WWE would love to have him exclusive to them for a period of time. And I think that that's going to be the case with these other promotions. AEW likes to play nicely with the promotions and respect them and their other relationships. So, like with CMLL, they have their whole thing about, AAA talent being on the shows and things like that. And they give, a good platform for stars from other promotions. But when we're looking at stuff with like Marigold, for example, it starts to feel in that way that people were saying about the NXT Japan idea coming back up. And that's my one thought with this it's possibly a concern, or it might be too far of a thought, is thinking about if a closer relationship with WWE from their perspective might mean something differently than the way that CyberFight might be looking at what a closer relationship could mean.
I think we'll know more about that once we start seeing, Marigold actually, running.
Yeah, their first show is I think it's Monday our time. It's Monday morning.
Yeah. I think we'll probably have a really good idea. Well, I shouldn't say probably. We might have a really good idea after that first show of like what this is going to be and what we're looking at.
Yeah, like if Bianca Belair just appears on the show, then we'll know.
Yeah, then we will.
the whole everything's all a big work about her. So
Jade giving a jaded to Otami.
Ooh, if only.
Yeah.
Actually, I think that Jade could do well in Japan.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I think that's pretty much us wrapped up for this week. Is that right with you, Doug?
Yeah, it's a shorter one, but that's good. Sometimes you have to have those.
Yeah. Well, next week we will certainly be looking at, I suppose, at how the Marigold show goes, even though, they're not currently listed as a promotion that we normally watch here on WrestleWatch. I think that it will be an interesting thing to discuss next week when they have their show, kind of, how it changes the landscape a little bit. Or maybe it doesn't at all. We'll find out next week.
I think so. All right. Well, until next week, I'm Doug.
And I'm Ryan. Thank you all for listening to WrestleWatch, the only wrestling free agency podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, do all the bells and notifications, whatever they tell you on those other videos, do it for us too.
All right. Thanks, everyone. You have a good one.